One Soviet colonel handed the West the secret that diffused the Cuban Missile Crisis and paid with his life. Over 5,000 classified photographs. Soviet missile manuals no Western analyst had ever seen. Launch readiness timelines that told Kennedy exactly how long he had before the weapons in Cuba became operational. All of it smuggled out of Moscow by a man whose name you have probably never heard. Oleg Vladimirovich Penkovsky was born on April 23, 1919, in Vladikavkaz, a city then marked by the scars of civil war. His father had fought for the White Army, a fact that would shadow the family under the new Soviet order. Despite this, Penkovsky entered the Red Army in 1937, just as Stalin's purges cut through the officer corps. He survived the Winter War with Finland and, as an artillery officer, saw the Eastern Front firsthand. In 1944, a battlefield wound nearly ended his career, but he recovered and after the war attended the Frunze Military Academy, a mark of distinction reserved for those seen as reliable by the regime. By 1953, Penkovsky had transferred into the GRU, the Soviet Military Intelligence Directorate. His fluency in foreign languages and technical knowledge set him apart, and he was trusted with postings abroad, including as a military attaché in Ankara. Inside the vast machinery of Soviet power, Penkovsky rose to deputy head of the Foreign Science Section, an office with access to missile data, war plans, and the secrets of the nuclear age. Yet, even as he advanced, the memory of his father's fate and the constant suspicion from superiors never fully disappeared. Ambition drove him forward, but so did frustration, denied promotions, blocked from foreign travel at key moments, and always reminded that his background could never be erased. Access to secrets was one thing. Deciding what to do with that access, especially when the fate of nations hung in the balance, was something else entirely. In August 1960, on a crowded Moscow bridge, a Soviet colonel placed his future and his life in the hands of strangers. The handwritten note he pressed into the palms of two American tourists was brief, but its intent was unmistakable. He offered himself as a soldier-warrior for the free world. That note did not travel directly to Washington or London. Instead, it set in motion a delicate operation that would stretch from the heart of the Soviet capital to the conference rooms of Western intelligence. Contact in Moscow was nearly impossible for Western agencies. The KGB watched every foreigner, every meeting, every movement. To avoid detection, Penkovsky's messages could not go straight to embassy doors. Instead, the British recruited Greville Wynne, a traveling businessman with no official intelligence background, to act as a cutout. Wynne became the bridge, meeting Penkovsky under the cover of trade delegations and ferrying packets of information out of the country. The CIA assigned Penkovsky the codename Hero, while MI6 called him Yoga. For almost 2 years, Wynne carried secrets concealed in ordinary objects, boxes of sweets, matchboxes, even a parcel hidden in a public toilet cistern. Penkovsky's tradecraft was meticulous. He used a Minix subminiature camera, small enough to fit in a pocket, to photograph thousands of pages of classified documents. These rolls of film were passed in dead drops scattered across Moscow, timed to avoid surveillance teams. Each package had to be invisible, each handoff untraceable. From April 1961, the operation shifted into a steady courier phase. Wynne would collect the material, hand it to MI6 in London or Paris, and from there it would reach CIA analysts in Washington. Every step required absolute precision. One mistake could mean exposure, arrest, or worse. But even as the West received Penkovsky's reports, a silent question haunted the analysts who read them. Was this treasure trove genuine, or a carefully planted deception? The answer would determine whether the world believed a Soviet colonel's warnings or dismissed them and risked catastrophe. The value of Penkovsky's reporting lay not in rumors or gossip, but in the sheer volume and precision of what he delivered. Western intelligence labeled his material iron bark, a special handling code reserved for the most sensitive sources. Over the course of 18 months, Penkovsky produced more than 5,000 photographs and documents. These were not summaries or second-hand notes. They included the actual technical manual for the Soviet ER-12 missile, known in NATO circles as the SS-4. The manual detailed everything: range, payload, fueling procedures, launch timelines. For the first time, American analysts could see that the R-12 had a range of about 2,500 kilometers and could be readied for launch in under 18 hours. Penkovsky also provided references to the longer-range R-14, or SSS-5, which extended the Soviet nuclear reach even further. Beyond the technical blueprints, Penkovsky's packets included operational schedules, crew training rotations, and even the Soviet command and control protocols. But the breakthrough came with what analysts called cratiology, the practice of matching Soviet shipping records and aerial photographs of cargo crates to the dimensions and contents described in Penkovsky's documents. When U-2 flights over Cuba captured images of long, uniform crates on Soviet freighters, the technical details in iron bark allowed the CIA to match each crate to specific missile components. The numbers lined up, the crates, the manuals, the site layouts, all pointed to a real and immediate threat. This was not abstract espionage. Penkovsky's intelligence gave the West the most concrete, actionable picture of Soviet missile capability ever obtained by human means. The evidence base was now too strong to ignore. Decisions would have to be made, and quickly. Inside the White House, October 1962 brought a kind of pressure few could imagine. The evidence streaming in from Langley was no longer a trickle of rumor or guesswork. Now, the president's advisors held in their hands direct technical descriptions, deployment schedules, and command protocols, details that could be traced line by line to Penkovsky's final intelligence packet, received in Washington by October 18th. This packet, stamped for special handling, laid out not only the range and readiness of Soviet missiles in Cuba, but also the operational timelines: 2 weeks to launch capability, no Cuban crews, and strict Soviet control. These facts, distilled from thousands of pages of classified Soviet documents, landed on the desk of CIA Director John McCone, who became the gatekeeper for what reached the president. On October 22nd, Kennedy stepped before the nation and announced a naval quarantine of Cuba. The word quarantine was chosen with care, a legal distinction that avoided the declaration of war, but a real line in the water all the same. The decision was not made in a vacuum. In the days leading up to the televised address, McCone briefed the Executive Committee of the National Security Council, known as EXCOM, citing the strength of evidence now available. The minutes from October 23rd show that confidence in the intelligence, in its specificity and its provenance, was decisive. Airstrikes or invasion would have risked Soviet retaliation and possible nuclear exchange. The clarity provided by Penkovsky's material allowed policymakers to weigh the risks, to trust that the missiles were not yet fully operational, and to gamble on a blockade instead of a first strike. But the window for action was narrowing. The last key packet had already arrived. The channel that fed Washington its most reliable human intelligence was in danger. On the other side of the world, Soviet security was closing in, and the flow of secrets was about to stop. On October 20th, 1962, Soviet counterintelligence swept into a Moscow flat, ending the most significant Western intelligence channel of the Cold War. Inside, agents discovered a Minox camera, exposed film, and a cache of operational notes, evidence that left no doubt about the scale of the breach. Penkovsky was arrested that day, and within hours, Greville Wynne, his British contact, was also detained, this time in Budapest. The network was finished. The trial opened in May 1963, its outcome never in question. Soviet prosecutors read out the charges: treason, espionage, and betrayal of the motherland. The official verdict was death. On May 16, 1963, Soviet records list Penkovsky's execution by firing squad. Yet rumors have lingered for decades. Some claim he was burned alive, others that he took his own life before the sentence could be carried out. The archival record remains silent on these details, offering only the certainty of a life ended by the state he once served. For those who watched the drama unfold in secret rooms and coded cables, the destruction of the channel was more than a tactical loss. It was a warning. In a closed system, being right too soon can carry the highest price. The arrest of Penkovsky sent ripples through the highest ranks of Soviet power. Within months, Marshal Sergei Vorontsov, once chief of Soviet artillery and Penkovsky's superior, was stripped of his rank and demoted from marshal to major general, a rare and public humiliation. Inside the GRU and KGB, the fallout was severe. Dozens of officers faced investigation, dismissal, or reassignment as the leadership launched internal purges to root out any trace of disloyalty. The methods Penkovsky used, including dead drops, Minox cameras, and coded messages, were abruptly abandoned, leaving gaps in Western collection and forcing a complete reassessment of tradecraft on both sides. The British handler, Greville Wynne, received an 8-year sentence in the Lubyanka prison, only to be exchanged in 1964 for Soviet spy Conan Molody. Intelligence chiefs labeled the affair Russia's greatest intelligence failure, and the language of betrayal echoed through classified files for years. The price was paid not only in lives, but in broken careers, shattered families, and the sudden disappearance of once reliable channels. Yet, even as the machinery of secrecy closed ranks, the question lingered. Had the damage truly been contained, or were there deeper fractures no purge could heal? Nuclear arsenals still stand on alert. Over 12,500 warheads worldwide. One man's risk changed the fate of millions, yet such decisions remain shrouded, entrusted to the shadows. In an age of renewed brinkmanship, the line between war and peace is still drawn by human hands. History demands we remember that.